One last stop here in our rookie preview series on Splash Play. Today it's a tight ends. It's not a deep class. It is a class with a few interesting prospects, though. We're going to talk about everybody available today. Of course, looking at the advanced analytics that I swear by for Sports Info Solutions. If you missed the previous videos, we did wide receivers yesterday, running backs last week, QBs 2 weeks ago, with the big board probably likely to drop Monday or Tuesday, would be my guess, at least based upon how it went last year. We got to get ready now, so let's get into it. Before we get into this year's prospects, real quick look back last year, 2024, what was right, what was wrong. It was really not a deep class at all, but as we talked about in yesterday's wide receiver video, the big thing that stands out, the guys that hit, and Brock Bowers is one easy one, obvious one from the moment that happened. Where basically he looked great from the moment he was playing in high school, looked good analytically in college as well. Also, the thing that we were talking about yesterday with receivers, where less air yards per game than his actualized yards. He took nothing, made it into something. That's something we're looking at for everybody here. Plus EPA overall, 0.5 EPA per target. Playing out wide, he wasn't great. That doesn't matter too much for a tight end anyway. Slot targets looked great with a 0.7 EPA there. Good EPA on short throws, 0.48 EPA there. Good EPA pass to sticks, 0.56 EPA on throws of 10 to 20 air yards. And good downfield, 0.59 EPA. Not a world beater there, but good enough at everything. And the red zone, I would say also good enough. 0.19 EPA on those plays inside the 10-yard line, a 1.4 EPA. The point really was that Brock Bowers is good at everything. So he's a unique prospect because he's one of those guys, again, going back to high school, his freshman year in college, he was a guy people thought was a viable top NFL draft pick at that point. So it's really hard to, I guess, get that one wrong. But I do want to highlight Bowers here because you have a guy in this class, Colston Loveland, who I do think people hold maybe not in similar esteem, but some pockets of there, people think he's a great tight end. I think when you look at a great tight end, you see Brock Bowers, the numbers that we have here, high target per out run rate here as well at 32%. Not a high air yards per attempt. He was getting targeted kind of the same way there was this year, where you get some screens, you get some kind of cheap near the line of scrimmage bullshit. But Brock Bowers takes that stuff, makes it into something special. So that's why he's Brock Bowers. That's why a lot of other tight ends are just another tight end. And for Bowers, that stood out. The guy that I got most wrong last year, and I still feel like there is a world where things get better for him if Zach Ertz is not back on the team next year, Ben Sinnott. So Ben Sinnott was one where video popped for me, his analytics. The EPA per target, not that great overall. I mean, compared to Brock Bowers, you're talking about a pretty big jump tier down below for a guy like Ben Sinnott. But I talk myself into Sinnott a lot because of the good target per out run rate, decent enough EPA, high avoided tackle rate that's basically neck and neck with Brock Bowers. Good EPA playing out wide, which really didn't matter too much. Ben Sinnott did not even get close to playing out wide this year. Playing out the slot, he barely even did that. He's playing just a lot of inline tight end. Short targets, he wasn't a great EPA guy, but still positive. Very good pass to sticks. Maybe that doesn't matter as much as just being good everywhere, which is something that I do care about for receivers more, but for some reason for tight ends, kind of threw it out the window a little bit, I guess, with Sinnott in particular. Negative EPA downfield. So I might have just fallen in love with Ben Sinnott as a prospect because of the video, the film of him. Like, he really is an elite after the catch guy, at least when I saw last year. Then we had the preseason stuff too. We had that 140-yard completion that worked out. Nothing worked out that well for him. I think the main thing to me still would be kind of like we talked about yesterday for Troy Franklin, where I still think Troy Franklin's got upside. Still think we saw the fact that he caught a 50-yard touchdown in the playoffs when it mattered the most against the Bills. Like, there's upside there, but when you have blockers in front of you, like, Cortland Sutton for Troy Franklin, like a Marvin Mims, like a Devon Valley coming in a little more developed with an older age and a bigger body, them signing Josh Reynolds, like, there's still barriers to the guy getting there. And as a result, even if he were good, we didn't really know he was good enough and he didn't do enough to earn it. For Ben Sinnott, I think it's the same thing where maybe he is good, maybe he's not, but he wasn't undeniably good enough to say, like, here's my big casting my lot with this guy. And I think that's where this year drafts, I want to be more conscious of things where if guys are flawed prospects, I don't want to make the assumption that they're going to be able to beat out everybody. And even with Ben Sinnott getting good draft capital, I mean, you're talking top 2 rounds, top 3 rounds for any tight end. That's normally an assumption that you're going to get a real role almost from the jump. That didn't actually come to fruition. So I would say that's something to be more mindful of. A guy like Theo Johnson doesn't grade out that well here in terms of my numbers. Not a good target earner, okay EPA, plus EPAs at every level, but none of them particularly special. He ends up being a freak athlete, though. That's something where he still ended up being a good fantasy play. So he got draft capital, got a starting job from week 1, but still didn't really produce enough where it really mattered. He honestly mattered a little bit for some best ball teams of mine, probably more than he should have, because I had such shitty tight ends when I didn't have Brock Bowers teams. But besides that, like for Theo Johnson, like he wasn't really a great player. And I think the analytics bared him out not being a great player. So the athletic testing stuff got him a job, but it didn't make him play well. So that's sort of the tough balance here. I think for, no denying prospects, we might not have any in this class, but let's talk about it here. Let's get to the 2025 tight ends. And really for 2024, I don't think there were huge lessons learned besides the fact that, like, for Ben Sinnott, I just should have played that agnostically, should have drafted him and Zach Ertz in equal amounts. If I had done that, my portfolio would have frankly looked much better. So a lesson learned here about not really ambiguous spots, no matter what the situation. So something to keep in mind here. Checking chats real fast. Got a lot of GMs. Got our Red Bindles here. Appreciate seeing him. Thing that bothered me with Sinnott is that Bates got so much of the backup work. He was a more reliable inline blocker, which is also crazy too, because Sinnott's whole thing was that he's supposed to be a good blocker. One thing, and it's going to come up with Harold Fannin, who I love the tape on, posted one of the highlight reels to the VIP Discord earlier in the week because I was just having a lot of fun watching him, which I got to tell you, after watching all these tight ends this morning, it's not fun watching tight ends. It's like wide receivers, even the shitty ones, like there's some fun to be had. And even the ones where it's like a lower tier prospect, I could talk myself into it, have some joy out of it. Tight ends, they all look very samey. Speaking of very samey, Colston Loveland, he feels very samey to me for a few different guys. Colston Loveland, 42% target route run rate for Michigan, so that's pretty big. He only ran 20 routes per game, but still a very noteworthy target rate here, getting fed the ball aggressively. A 7.1 intended air yards per attempt. Again, for tight ends, getting short targets doesn't matter that much. If you get reliable deep targets, you are certainly a more interesting prospect to me. But a guy like Luke Musgrave got reliable deep targets at Oregon State. You know what happened? He got to the pros, and he's not able to get those targets as much. And then all of a sudden, he's basically being phased out where I can get short targets better and do more with them in Tucker Craft. So for Colston Loveland, the short targets here are mid-range targets. That's fine. Negative EPA per target does spook me a little bit. Granted, we're dealing with a pretty good amount of volume here, 8.6 targets a game, and that high of a target per out run rate. But like, you want to see an efficient player in college. If you're efficient in college, you're more likely to be, slightly less efficient, but still in that range of efficiency in the pros. We saw it happen last year with Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. in particular, two guys who were outlandishly good in EPA in college at LSU. And with Jayden Daniels too, for what it's worth. And then they come to the pros, and it's like they're still very good in EPA, and they're producing a lot as a result, because they're still very good guys who are played well in college and really beat expectations at that level. Then they're doing it again at this level. For Colston Loveland to be under expectation a little bit, to have a negative EPA, that spooks me. So volume earning, not bad. Playing out the slot, he was also not great with the negative 0.08 EPA there. Playing out wide, he was actually a little bit better, getting a 0.45 EPA. But not playing out wide a lot. And again, for tight ends, they're very rarely playing out wide unless they're Isaiah Likely type. Harold Fannin, that might matter for Colston Loveland, it probably doesn't. So his slot success being not there is not a good thing. Under 10 air yards, only a 0.02 EPA. He's not adding value short throws. He's getting them. He's getting fed PPR points. That, as we talked about yesterday with the concept of air yards, PPR scams aren't necessarily going to be there for you. Like you have it in college because you're the best receiver in that group in Michigan, maybe, or you have whatever the reason may be. Good familiarity with the QB. The coach has a predisposition to targeting tight ends more. That's it. In the pros, that goes away. It comes down more to your true talent. Are you better at earning targets? Are you deserving of earning targets more than this guy who's playing flanker, this guy who's in the slot, this guy, like whatever the case may be, the running backs? Do you earn targets more than those guys? There's no guarantee that Colston Loveland does that again. But, target earning at one level, same thing for RBs getting touches. Theoretically, one coach sees a reason to feed you targets, another coach will as well. It's sort of the logic. Besides that for him, again, not a great EPA in short throws. Negative EPA throwing past the sticks to him, which is really worrisome. As a tight end, that's one of your value points, is you're sort of the possession receiver that can move the chains a little bit theoretically. If he's adding negative value there, that means he's not getting first downs, which means, just bad situations, not extending drives in fantasy. Even if he's PPR scamming you, he's not helping the team out to keep the ball in the field. Downfield, a 0.9 EPA, so that's very good. And we're going to get to a comp in a moment. Red zone targets got 0.7 a game, not a lot in volume, but a 0.45 EPA. It's not bad. Converting them to touchdowns at an 80% clip. The main thing to me is I don't think Colston Loveland's bad. He's got enough. He's a little bit slighter than 6'5", 245, I would think. Definitely slighter than Tyler Warren, who's billed at 6'6", 260. But he's supposed to be more of an inline blocker than Harold Fannin. If he can do that well and he grades out well with that, I think he's going to be a first-round pick. Maybe a chance to be second. I will say with Colston Loveland, though, there are two guys that come to mind. Neither of them are fun comps. Michael Mayer, another guy who get fed a lot of targets at Notre Dame, then comes to the pros. Not the same player because he's not as good of a guy to feed targets to in the pros as he was competing against lesser competition, both on his team and in college and in general. Dalton Kincaid, another one comes to mind for me with Colston Loveland, where there's some big days for sure that he's had. A lot of feeding of targets, but he's a little bit slight. Doesn't seem like he's going to hold up in blocking quite as well. And, target earning is better than Dalton Kincaid's was, but I saw a lot of Dalton Kincaid in this film in a way where, I love Kincaid coming out. I love that he played like a receiver. Thought that was very fun. In reality, it hasn't really worked out that well in the pros so far. Despite what other YouTube channels starring Liam Murphy might tell you, it hasn't been a good experience so far for Dalton Kincaid in the pros. And I thought that there were some shots. He also destroyed USC in college. I had some priors on him where I was like, all right, this guy has got upside. Maybe he still does, but he hasn't had it yet. For Loveland, that's two worrying comps that immediately came to mind for me that I saw, both with the numbers, with the Mayer comp really jumped out in the numbers. With the film, the Kincaid comp kind of came out a lot to me. Doesn't mean that he's not a good target. Doesn't mean that he's not worth drafting. If he's going drafted, end of a draft in the big board, I would take him. If he's got this brand name because people love Michigan and Colston Loveland is a name they know, and he's a public player like Blake Corum was, that's sort of where I don't really have the faith that I would want to take him. Where Brock Bowers went last year, no chance. Where Ben Sinnott went last year, sure, especially in the big board. Ben Sinnott was free, so I would take that. But if he settles more like Ben Sinnott was in the regular BBM drafts, we're talking 170s, maybe a brief period in the 150s, I would still take some shots because I think he has a decent chance of being the tight end with the best draft capital. My pick would be Tyler Warren, I think, to get the best draft capital. But Colston Loveland, look, I think he is an okay prospect. Target earning is impressive. Negative EPA is not impressive. I don't think that if he goes really highly, you want to chase him up super highly. He's not Brock Bowers, is one thing I will say. And I would say a lot more high of a likelihood to me of him being Michael Mayer or him being Dalton Kincaid, which are two outcomes that are still not bad. They're not Brock Bowers, and don't expect a Brock Bowers outcome. Let's see. On that Michigan team that had to be great to get 20 routes, sure. I mean, look, they love to run. He's fed a lot, but that's the thing too, where schematically in the pros, you're not going to be this risk-averse offense quite as much feeding your tight end. 42% of the time he's running a route. It's such an egregious amount. And if it was talent, if you were, if you looked like tight end Malik Neighbors, I'd be like, oh shit, this guy's amazing. They're feeding the ball because he's the best player in the field. I don't think that's the case. So I think he's okay. Again, the air yards to yards earned split, not that far off. 60 compared to 58, so that's fine. I think he's going to be an okay guy in the pros, though. I don't know that I see anything special. So draft capital being there, positive. Okay player who earned targets, positive. Negative EPAs, not great EPAs, negative for him for sure. But, elevated version of just a guy at tight end is what I would say is Colston Loveland right now. Tyler Warren, to me, you might not want to hear this comp either. The pro comp, the good thing that people would say about him, you see some George Kittle in the game. For me, what I saw was I was like, holy shit, this guy looks like Ben Sinnott too, which I like. I like he's a violent runner, a really, really, really violent runner, which, you can see by the joy, you can see me lighting up in my eyes a little bit here. I said this from day one. I love violent runners. It's one of the things for me in every sport that I get that. Obviously, for your QB, for your Jayden Daniels I don't want him running into contact. For my RBs, for my tight ends, for my wide receivers, if they can absorb the blows, I want them to be going after it. Tyler Warren gets after it. You can see it a little bit in his yak, 7 yards after catch here, 22.4% avoided tackle rate. That showed a little bit more. That said, keep in mind, Brock Bowers, almost a 33% avoided tackle rate, as we just saw. Ben Sinnott, over 30% as well. So Tyler Warren, I'd put his elusiveness a little bit beneath that. But he is billed at 6'6", 261, which is batshit. If he runs, and these guys are all expected to run about a 4.7 40. So none of them are quite the freak athlete or expect to be the freak athlete of, your Luke Musgraves, your Tucker Crafts, your guys, your Tip Reitman or whatever his name was last year. None of them should probably be that level of athlete. But if Tyler Warren runs the same 40 time as Loveland and Fannin with 2 inches more and about 20 to 30 pounds more, he's going to probably be your top tight end off the board. Feel like Warren is more of a fullback than Sinnott ever was. I mean, he's got better targeting than Sinnott, 32% target per run, low air yards per target. I think he can be an inline tight end. I think he can play and move around a little bit. You got plus EPAs playing out wide. Again, not that matters for a tight end, but it does show a little bit of mobility, flexibility, ability to do different stuff. 0.49 EPA playing out wide. 0.52 EPA playing on the slot. Short throws, you got 5.7 of them a game. Turn that into a 0.34 EPA. Mid-range, a 0.56 EPA. Downfield, 0.5 targets a game. Only a 0.41 there, but that's fine. For a tight end, he's probably not going to get a ton of deep targets anyway. Red zone, he was a beast, getting 1.3 targets a game, a 0.88 EPA there. I tend to think there's more good than not for him. I do feel like, again, a lot of Ben Sinnott in his game. And for tight end, it really does come down to, like, is the opportunity there for you in week one, day one, all that to get on the field? It's hard to do that in a tight end. We talked about it last year with, like, the second contract breakout guys. A lot of tight ends break out a lot in that second contract. Jonnu Smith is probably one of them, though, he had some upside before. I'm trying to think who else would be a comp. Evan Ingram would be our most recent best comp for a guy that took the leap after that first contract. Noah Fant was one that people thought would take the leap with that same criteria. I would say he did not take a leap this year. That'd be your hope, I think, in general, tight end. So it's harder for rookies to be good day one. But I think Tyler Warren with his natural stuff, much like I would have thought with Ben Sinnott, I think the blocking gets him on the field. I think the after catch stuff is really impressive. The target earning is good enough to me. It just depends where he goes. Like, is he going to get blocked by somebody else who has got an established rapport with an OC like Cliff Kingsbury? That's going to hurt him a little bit. But I think he gets good draft capital. I think we're talking top 2 rounds no matter what, maybe a shot at first round. And yeah, I don't know. I'm into Tyler Warren. I think he has enough upside as well, spiked some upside in terms of the game log as well. That's that. Tip got buried behind McBride. He wasn't a good producer in college. He's a freak athlete, but he, like a Theo Johnson, and again, that comes down to the situation where, good athletic testing earns you good draft capital, and then you land in a spot like the Giants where they didn't want, they lost Darren Waller, and then they didn't want to play Daniel Bellinger again as a starter. That situation worked out for Tip Ryman. If he got that same situation, maybe he would have been the same thing as Theo Johnson, but I wouldn't have expected him to produce that well because he didn't produce that well in college. As far as college football DFS goes, it was always a Fannin Warren draft as an output. Helped Warren get carries out of the backfield, and Fannin didn't have elite competition. Yes, that's certainly true. Yeah, Warren does get some legit carries. That's a good point by Chunk, though. You can see it in some of the film. He does get. I don't keep tight end carries as a stat because so few of them get them. We did get a few handoffs. Fannin also gets some handoffs as well. These guys get used a little bit more uniquely, which the pros probably won't do. But yeah, Warren, I'm intrigued by. I would say, gun to my head, who's going to be a better pro? I would probably take the shot on Warren over Loveland. I think I would take that shot. He's going to be a good enough blocker, and I think he does enough in the pass game. Again, whiffs of George Kittle. Even though I am once bitten, twice shy about another Ben Sinnott lookalike, I do think that Tyler Warren's got some upside and could do well. Warren of the Chiefs would feed families. I don't know. You're going to have Kelsey still there for the future, and you still have Noah Gray there under not a long-term deal, but longer term. Wouldn't be surprised the Saints or Colts go with Warren, but I'm careful with him. The Saints, Colts have actually said it in terms of press conferences. They want to get a tight end in to help him out. Warren, I would still worry about that group there and not having a true guy. But if they take him first, second round, that's probably the draft capital you need for them to be motivated to get him on the field. But yeah, Warren, I would say, depending where he goes, if he's the guy going 200 and Colston Loveland is going 100, I would take Tyler Warren in the 200s every time over that. If he's going a little bit too highly because he did have a pretty good run through the playoffs and really that last month of the season, I'd be spooked about him going too highly. If he goes higher than, again, that Ben Sinnott BBM range in the 150s to 170s, I don't want to be there. If he's going in that range, I would take the Flyers because I think he gets enough draft capital. And I believe in the talent. Harold Fannin. So he's a really unique one. I love the film. I love what I saw. I would say the comp that comes to mind to me, which I think Bleacher Report had as well this morning, and I was like, well, fuck me. Parallel thought with Bleacher Report. He looks like Isaiah Likely. I think he looks to me like Isaiah Likely did coming out of Coastal Carolina. A Senior Bowl for Likely is what made him take the big leap. The issue with Fannin, he's a little bit small. He's listed at 6'4", 230. That might be generous for him. They don't have him graded out well as a good inline blocker, so it's going to limit his potential a little bit to get on the field. The other guy I would say for Fannin, who I saw a little bit, this is more the case for Oronde Gadsden, but he kind of looks like a receiver playing tight end a little bit out there. Definitely a lot of routes not in line, playing out of the slot, some playing out wide as well. You can see he got 1.6 targets a game out wide, good for a 0.37 EPA. That amount of targets out wide is more than anybody else in the class, besides Oronde Gadsden, who is basically a wide receiver as well. 4.5 slot targets game, good for a 0.45 EPA. Short throws, he took that for a 0.35 EPA, throws under 10 air yards. 0.75 EPA and throws past the sticks, and basically a 1 flat EPA for throws to 20-plus air yards. Red zone, a little bit less good in tight spaces, which makes sense because he's not the huge-bodied tight end who's going to dominate guys with power quite as much as you want to see. But in terms of fantasy production and upside, you're going to talk about a guy with Fannin, and this is at Bowling Green, so lesser competition. Taking 85 air yards per game and turning him into 119 actualized yards. That is very legit. 25% avoided tackle rate, very legit. 0.49 EPA per target, very legit. 40% target per run rate, 11.9 targets a game, all very legit. And this is one of the things for me where you talk about Colston Loveland, his target rate. He might have been the best available option on a conservative, kind of shitty Michigan offense. Harold Fannin was the best option on that field, like by far. Like he was a guy who's a tier above talent. Everybody else in Bowling Green, he earned targets because he is that dude, and they built the plane out of Harold Fannin. So where does he go is the big question to me. Does he go somewhere fun? Does he go somewhere with a creative offensive coordinator who's going to treat him like a receiver? Does he get the draft capital? If he goes 4th, 5th round, I think he's probably fucked. If he goes 2nd round, mid-second, low second, if he somehow got into the 1st, I don't think that's likely. Then you're getting a coach who's getting him committed to giving him like real work and seeing talent in him that they think they can take to the next level. But his performance here in terms of just the pure numbers, the counting stats of it all, the EPA of it all, like you're talking about offensive performance-wise, a prospect that looks like a Brock Bowers in terms of those counting stats numbers, who looks like, the best tight ends we've had. Your Michael Mayer, kind of numerically look the best. Like he looks like that, but it's at Bowling Green and it's playing kind of, video game tight end football. So what is that worth? I'm not sure. I will say what it's worth for me is taking him as tight end 3 in a lot of big board builds. But like really, like the main thing is that this guy produced at such a crazy level. And again, it's different than we talked about with like Brock Bowers, which we talked about in the beginning for Adam who's joining here and trying to talk to me like I give a shit about his takes. So I'm really not in the mood after the big Lenny stuff yesterday. We're getting my takes out. This is what the point of the videos is. For Harold Fannin, like he produced better than probably any tight end we've had coming into the draft in the last 3 to 4 years. Now, like there's different metrics you have for that when you compete against, in the SEC, you're a top prospect. Like we talked about with Brock Bowers at the fucking beginning. If you're a top prospect for years, you produce like he did, and you take nothing and turn into something like he did, that's worth a ton as well. But like in terms of just fantasy production, what you're looking for, outlier production, and a guy taking something and turning it into more, Harold Fannin has done that better than any tight end that I've seen. And now like the last 4 years, we're really looking at these numbers aggressively. So that would be my take on Harold Fannin. I don't think he's as much of a can't miss prospect like we talked about with Brock Bowers last year, but I do think like the fantasy production here is as good or better than anybody you're going to find here. So that's sort of my main thing I would point out for him. It could be better, but that's basically it. So Fannin, take him is it. Hopefully he doesn't go too high. I don't think he will. Because again, the draft capital might not be there and the size might not be there enough for the athletic testing and all that. He could kind of fall apart a little bit in terms of the milestones we have, like RAS testing and all that. But he is still like a player that I think is worth going out of your way to get because he did some crazy stuff in college. And I would say your best comp, besides the Isaiah Likely thing, he's like tight end Rashee Rice, where played lesser competition, but the numbers stand out in a way where it's like, if this guy is somebody buys in on him, gives him the shot, he's going to probably do something with the shot, would be my guess. Elijah Arroyo. So another, it's so Miami, it's obviously very Miami and, Mario Cristobal being there, whatever. All Latino guys at skill position. So you had Damian Martinez at RB, who looked pretty good. Xavier Restrepo, we talked about receiver. He looked pretty good. Elijah Arroyo, another guy here. Didn't earn targets well at all. 18% target per run rate. 0.5 EPA per target, though. He looks good out there. I was impressed by the Arroyo tape. Not impressed by the underlying metrics here, where low target per run rate, also getting targeted, deeper than anybody else at tight end. Kind of the comp would be, to me, less burly Luke Musgrave, where there's some downfield success, in particular, a 1.3 EPA, one of the best marks in this class here for guys getting targeted downfield. And you did see about, one target a game, let's say downfield, throws a 20-plus air yards. But Arroyo, to me, and he was good in the red zone too. Wasn't targeted a ton there, but a 1.2 EPA. Actually pretty impressive for any volume there. Lack of target earning, though, is a big issue. If Arroyo goes somewhere fun, I could maybe see taking him as a tight end 3. I don't know that he's really a play in the big board. And I think too, the Miami guys all coming up a little bit together, and the numbers for them all look good. Again, Martinez, Restrepo, Arroyo, I've seen all these guys now. I think it's all a testament to Cam Ward too, which I would say another feather in his cap. But Yeah, I was intrigued by Arroyo tape. Like, I don't think he's bad. Not a high avoided tackle rate guy either. So the fact that he was able to kind of sustain these deep plays, I would say another mark in terms of that being more of a Cam Ward thing than an Arroyo thing. So low target earning, but great success with it. Yeah, it gives you some hope, I guess, for him. But I think that's more Cam Ward is going to make guys into stars around him, would be my thought. Arroyo looked decent, good landing spot for him where he could plan right away, will be helpful, but tough for me to click in the big board. Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, realistically, your three guys are clicking in the big board are Loveland, Warren, Fannin. These other guys, if the steam is there, get them more. I think really talking about them now is more about pre-prep for the NFL draft in case these guys do matter a little bit more, have great RAS testing, and then they end up getting drafted a little bit higher. But that's that. Oscar Delp here, who, as Adam points out, Delp's coming back to Georgia. We'll just talk about him quickly anyway. Decent EPA here, 0.39 EPA, 19% touchdown rate. That looks okay. Avoid attack rate, 19% okay. Not a great target earner as well here. Also not a lot of volume. We're talking about a Darnell Washington level of volume for a guy tight end, at least for this year. EPA numbers on short throws looking very good here. So we took some short stuff, made that work. Oscar Delp in the mid-range, 0.69 EPA there. Really the lack of volume be the main thing for Delp. So guy to watch out for. Another year in college for him, I guess. Film to me did not look like anything special. Really this entire group of guys here before we get to, Mason Taylor, who Justin's talking about. These guys all didn't feel that great to me. I think they all kind of seemed like similar, just a tight end that feel like they're doing anything any tight end could do. But, Delp, somebody to watch out for next year. So we'll spare time in it, but really to me, less impressive version of Arroyo in terms of low target earning is what I would say for him. But I don't think he was being made by his QB as much as Arroyo was. Terrance Ferguson, who may shock you here, white guy. I don't know, threw me for a loop a little bit. 20 targets per route, or 20 routes per game, 28% target route run rate. So one of the better target earners in the class here, tight end. 0.47 EPA per target. I would say that he's not Mary. He didn't earn targets. That would be if I'm going to say Mary, it's got to be a guy that earned a shitload of targets and you maybe question the underlying ability. But he didn't earn targets. He earned about half the amount of targets that Mayer earned at Notre Dame his last year. Terrance Ferguson, Oregon player, Oregon's offense, we did see last year does lead to high EPAs for guys generally, but also those guys end up being pretty good for the most part. Obviously, Bucky being the better example than Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin, though, fucking had some plays this year. Better blocker than receiver. Okay, got it. Point being for Ferguson, I think he looks a little bit better than these guys. Film-wise, I kind of just thought he was okay. But a 0.4 EPA on throws under 10 air yards, a 1.2 EPA passes sticks. A negative EPA downfield's not great. 0.2 EPA in the red zone when you're getting decent volume, also not great. He's 6'5", 225, 255 is his build height and weight, so that's good enough size, or maybe he can get there. But I think that he is like 4th, 5th round guy material, probably backup tight end. You're talking kind of like that Brevin Span Ford tier, where maybe he gets drafted and he's on a roster, but I don't think he's actually doing anything. He does look a little bit better, I'd say, than, Briningstool is okay. I don't know. Terrance Ferguson, not awful, but didn't wow me enough where I'm going to kind of put on the cape for him here. There was a basketball player named Terrance Ferguson, who I believe was on the Thunder, but I don't think he's in the league anymore. I mean, he's definitely not in the league anymore. Jake Briningstool, maybe he's in the international leagues or something. I don't know. Jake Briningstool, 22% target per out run rate, 0.3 EPA per target. I thought the tape for him looked a little bit better, but mostly, again, just a dude. Played out wide a little bit, wasn't great there with a 0.2 EPA. Played in the slot, was actively not good there with a 0.09 EPA per target. 0.2 EPA on short throws. Positive EPAs everywhere, but nothing that impressive. Decent in the red zone with a 0.73 EPA, which I think stands out in his tape a little bit. I don't know. I felt like he and Ferguson, some okay video, but really just dudes just being tight ends, really. I really didn't feel like anything special for these guys. If they get drafted well, if they test well, I think they'll look more appealing to me because you'll start to see the positives more so. But I didn't see anything that makes them stand out. Like if they looked like Tyler Warren out there, if they looked like Harold Fannin out there, I'd go like, all right, well, there's something visual here that makes me think you're special. In reality, I think these are just kind of guys, really. So Oronde Gadsden is another one where he is not just a guy. He is more of a wide receiver in a tight end kind of situation at Syracuse. Played out of the slot a good amount, got 5.4 targets a game out of the slot. With only 8.4 targets a game, it's really noteworthy to kind of see. 1.6 targets out wide as well. Again, tied most of the class with Harold Fannin. And he was good with a 0.4 EPA there. Not as good out of the slot with a 0.27 EPA. He, to me, looks like Kellen Winslow Jr. out there, which I don't know where that comp, like it's not a team-based comp. I don't know if maybe my brain jumped a little because he's a child of an NFL player, Oronde Gadsden, former NFL player. But Kellen Winslow Jr., if you want to throw it back, the thing is, like, for Kellen Winslow Jr., I think as a player, part of the reason he existed and had success was that he went top 5 or top 10, whatever it was. Oronde Gadsden's not going to go top 10 or top 5. So, like, he could be a man without a position. The worst case scenario for him is you're talking, and this is a deep cut, you're talking about him being like a Sal Cannella type, who UFL player who sometimes floated in to the NFL. That's what I see for Gadsden the most. If he gets draft capital, if he's like a freak athlete somehow and is fantastic, then maybe he gets you there a little bit more. But I think for Gadsden, like, he looks like a receiver. CBS's mock draft had him as a receiver, which I think he's too big to be a receiver, and that Johnny Wilson weighs 6'6", 236. But I think for Oronde Gadsden, there's something there. It's just not traditional. It's not a traditional tight end something. It would have to be, again, like Harold Fannin, but, you know, a deconstructed version of Harold Fannin. It would have to be a coach taking a big stand on him in the NFL draft, and then you go there and you're like, shit, this guy'd be good. Lawrence Cager's a good comp. I can see some Lawrence Cager. Kind of gimmicky offense, but he was heavily involved in an offense loaded with weapons. Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I would say for Gadsden, again, he looked good visually. It's just, you think about the NFL part of it. I don't know how he fits in the NFL with the inline blocking and what's expected of a tight end to be a guy who gets meaningful routes and is out there regularly. Gunnar Helm is a guy that PFF. So PFF has these two guys in terms of their big board ranked higher than Harold Fannin. They're both more traditional tight ends, Gunnar Helm and Mason Taylor. Gunnar Helm looks like a tight end ass name. Somebody said in the chat a couple minutes ago. 22% target route run rate, 0.61 EPA is very good, especially when you consider the fact, like we talked about, your same offensive environment as the guys a receiver, Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond, who we talked about yesterday. And Gunnar Helm having a positive EPA when those guys, especially Matthew Golden, who had the big enough sample size, was not that high of an EPA player. Does stand out a little bit. That said, positive EPAs everywhere. Playing out of the slot, 0.71 EPA, but not a lot of volume there. 0.44 EPA under short throws, under 10 air yards. 1 flat EPA, 10 to 20 air yards. 2.6 EPA on deep throws, but he probably got like 2 of those in the year, basically, be my guess. Good in the red zone as well, but just low on volume everywhere. So the big issue for Helm is that he didn't command targets, but it was at Texas where they have receivers they have to feed. They have running backs they have to feed as well. So I can give Gunnar Helm grace for that. He kind of seems to me like just a guy a little bit in terms of the film and in terms of what these numbers are, but he was really efficient. He avoided tackles to a 24% clip. I would say if you're looking for the pro side of the comp, you're probably talking like a Cade Otton type where you're just a dude, but maybe some chance where if the situation aligns and he's going to be fed targets that he can actually have a tangible upside. I think that's how I would view Gunnar Helm, but again, PFF thinks he's the number 3 tight end off the board. I think with Fannin's unique abilities, I would be a little bit surprised by that. But Helm is a more legit traditional tight end. He probably makes a roster, but it doesn't feel like a guy that you have to get on the field right away. On feels right. Maybe good if Evans and Godwin are out. Yeah, I think that's it. Like, again, there's really good underlying numbers here. Like avoided tackles, scores touchdowns, efficiency everywhere. But if you have a 22% target route run rate, like it's hard to go. This guy takes a big leap up. Like in reality, I just don't know how you become a meaningful fantasy prospect at tight end. That matters in year 1 if you have that low of a target rate in college. That's basically that. All right, and we got Mason Taylor here, our last prospect. So guy that LSU fans like. I feel like one telling thing, maybe for LSU in general, maybe for just in general overall, Mason Taylor, a lot of his highlights, if you watch YouTube, all with Jayden Daniels. It's a lot of Jayden Daniels making him have some nice plays. Mason Taylor, I think, has some juice in terms of the visual stuff. In terms of stats, though, same thing. Target route run rate being basically exactly where Gunnar Helm is, 21.8% compared to 21.7. Much lower EPA with a 0.28 EPA per target. And again, LSU was maybe not that great offensively this year, at least certainly compared to last year. So you maybe give a little bit of grace there, but I don't know. He played out wide a little bit. The 0.32 EPA doesn't really matter. 0.42 EPA in the slot, that's okay. 0.28 EPA on short throws, it's not bad. 0.25 EPA pass to sticks, not bad. 0.2 EPA downfield, not bad. If he were a better target earner, I'd probably be more willing to go like, all right, well, he played with a shittier QB than Jayden Daniels. Maybe that's the reason why. But low efficiency, low target earning, not really sold on Mason Taylor being a guy. The biggest thing going for him is that PFF had him again at number 4 in their big board, ranked ahead of Harold Fannin. So if he gets second, third round capital, goes somewhere in that Theo Johnson spot where there's no tight ends left, and they spent draft capital on you and you're an okay athlete and you might play day one, then you take Mason Taylor, I think, and he might be worth something. But really, again, a little bit better version of just a guy, but I think mostly just a guy. So, guys, if you got value of this video, I think we're at the cusp here, unless somebody has any tight end requests, which I doubt you do. So please make sure to subscribe down below. Hit the like button, leave a comment. It goes a long way for me here. Just one guy running an NFL channel, NBA channel, trying to do the best I can to get ready for next season while still being in the moment for this NFL season, while still doing NBA content every day. So it's a grind here, and support goes a long way. That's why people are going to be shitty in January. I fucking have no patience for it. That's the way it looks. But tight end, it's not as fun as other years, but you still got some guys here. Check the chats real fast. Don't need Brant. Ben Eurosec. Okay. Brant Kuithe. Okay, let's look at this Brant. I gotta say, other than I think Adam with Lad, the chat has not crushed it with prospect recommendations. So I'm waiting for it to happen again. All right, so Brant Kuithe, 31% avoided tackle rate, 31% target per out run. Where did old Brant play? Looking at Wisconsin. No, Utah. Okay, so another Utah tight end, Dalton Kincaid. He's 25 years old, so that's not good right away. 25 and just turned 25 in December, so that's a little bit better. I thought he was going to turn 26 soon. Good target earning, not great out of the slot. Negative 0.2 EPA out of the slot. So I would think that people would immediately jump to Dalton Kincaid comps, and that slot performance will make you immediately go not Dalton Kincaid. Play a little bit out wide, was okay-ish there at the 0.2 EPA, really not good. Short throws, a 0.06 EPA, not that good. 0.3 EPA, mid-range throws, past the sticks, not good. Downfield, 0.16 EPA, not good. Okay, in the red zone, the 0.7 EPA. Yeah. Really old, not good Dalton Kincaid is what I'm seeing here. More actualized yards than air yards, so a positive for him there. And, positive for Gunnar Helm, negative for Mason Taylor if we're going to, keep that metric going here. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see anything that would make me think he's a guy at 25 years old. It's going to matter very much, but hey, if he gets drafted. Most injury-prone player you've ever seen in college football? Well, there you go. All right, guys, so I think that's it for this one. My key takeaways to this, and again, quick ask, subscribe, do all that stuff. It does go a long way here. Especially if you're watching this content in January and you're not subscribed, just please hit the like button and subscribe, because you're the audience here that should be a part of the channel, the regular, if you're willing to put through me, digging through an Excel and trying to create, a picture for you guys about these guys. My takeaways, though, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Harold Fannin, I think are 3 guys who really want to draft the big board. It does seem like there's enough people out there that think Gunnar Helm, Mason Taylor are going to get drafted, that those guys are somewhat names to know. But really the main thing to me is, I think Loveland is probably your highest draft capital guy because the name's just been there enough. You have a faint chance that he goes the Michael Mayer route where the name's been there long enough and the warts have kind of appeared a little bit, because I wasn't impressed by the efficiency stuff. And the target earning, I think, feels fluky for him in a shitty offense. But I think he still, no matter what, goes first, second round. So he probably matters and lands in a spot that they're going to try to use him. Tyler Warren, I think, is a fun prospect, but does look like, to me, if people watched Ben Sinnott, I think they would know Tyler Warren looks a lot like Ben Sinnott in terms of the highlights, in terms of what they did in college. So Warren has a lot of steam in him from the last month or so of good games. But I would say for Tyler Warren, I think he's got some Kittle if you want to look for the plus side of the outcome. But to me, though, the violence he runs with, the after catch stuff, the looking kind of like a fullback / H-back with how you approach things, he looks a lot like Ben Sinnott. So in terms of this class, he's a top tight end prospect. Hard to imagine for me him not going top 2 rounds. But I do think he comes to that same Ben Sinnott risk that maybe he's just not a natural inline tight end the way you want to see. Harold Fannin is the one where I will cape for. I think there's a really unique thing to his offensive ability. Granted, it was a Bowling Green, but his production, as I mentioned, and I don't say this lightly, I try to keep historical context in mind. He's not a prospect like Brock Bowers. He wasn't great as a freshman. Like, he wasn't the best tight end in football the moment he became a college player, and probably when he was still a high school player. But he is a guy that did something really unique at Bowling Green by being like this video game tight end / this really big offensive weapon in a way that I think a coach, especially a coach, your Ben Johnson type, could see that and go like, you know what? I can do something special and creative with this. And I think that's where I would take a shot on Harold Fannin, especially if he's free. So that's it for tight ends, guys. I encourage you, if you missed the other videos, go back and watch all the stuff we did for QBs, running backs, wide receivers. It is very likely that the big board drops next week, at least based upon last year's timing. So if you want to get ready for it. Of course, I'll keep talking about these guys as I learn more info, as the year goes on, as more news trickles out, the draft reports and all that trickle out more. But this is the hard part. This is like the not fun part of drafting, is having these takes and being willing to puff your chest out and say like, I like this guy, because nobody's willing to do that right now besides your dynasty nerds, your NFL draftnik guys. And frankly, they're not thinking the same way as you are as a best ball player. So we'll keep talking about it here. Join down below, $4.99. Hit the VIP Discord if you want to ask me more questions. I will drop these data sheets as well for this year's college data, as well as last year's, on the community tab on YouTube, as well as in the VIP Discord after the stream ends. So check that out. I'll be back tomorrow with our conference championship preview. Crazy. Jayden Daniels. Oh man, it's going to be fun. I might even put that jersey on. You put that Jayden jersey for tomorrow for a conference title game preview. So I'll see you guys then, back for NBA as well at 4 p.m. today on the Stochastic channel at 5 p.m. for the deeper dive as well. So check those out. Gamble responsibly, guys, even though it is always money time here. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at /PlayPod. See you guys again soon. Enjoy your days and good luck. Bye-bye.